Hey guys, Todd Dawalt here, and welcome to the Construction Leading Edge podcast. Today's episode is a conversation between Monish Khadye, one of our Construction Leading Edge coaches, and Jake Lewendal. He's the owner of Momentum Development in Montana. And here's what you're going to take away from this conversation. One of the common themes of this conversation is about hard conversations. So you're going to learn about the best time to have hard conversations about your business and some tips for how to do it. Jake shares some key learnings from a family partnership, the root causes behind some of the issues that made it go not so well, and you'll hear some recommendations and best practices that Jake has for you if you're part of or if you're considering joining the family business. You'll hear about the reasons Jake realized that he sought out partners in business and some of the voids he was trying to fill, and also the ways he ended up learning how to fill those voids without a business partner. You'll learn about a few crucial things to do at the front end of setting up a business partnership that unfortunately most people skip. You'll hear about the concept of how clear is kind. A lot about communication and setting expectations. How our greatest strength can be our greatest weakness when it's overused. Jake talks about one thing that he feels like he has cracked the code on in his business. Jake also talks about, and Monish also talks about this as well, the importance of being able to handle rejection, and then how to think differently about rejection. You'll hear about getting comfortable being uncomfortable and the need to do that, and then how Jake went through the Systematized Your Construction Business program and what's different now about life and business and some of the positive ripple effects that he's experienced from going through that. So without further ado, let's get to that conversation with our Construction Leading Edge coach, Monish Khadye and Jake Lewendal. Enjoy.
Hey, this is Monish Khadye from the Construction Leading Edge, and today our guest on the podcast is Jake Lewendal from Momentum Development. G'day, Jake. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hey, so as you said, my name is Jake Lewendal. I run Momentum Development. And so I grew up in the construction industry. I sometimes like to say I've been sweeping floors since I was 12 years old. And, as my dad had me on the job site cleaning up. And I went to college here in Bozeman, Montana. That's where I'm based. And I worked for my dad through college, kind of as an on-site superintendent, learning about the management, the scheduling, all of that good stuff. And all the while I was doing that, I was also the cleanup guy. So sweeping floors for God knows, I don't know, five plus years straight. And I remember one of my favorite things used to be collecting all of the electrical wire and go and getting cash for it at the recycling plant. It was my little bonus. So that was cool. But went through college working for him. Interestingly enough, I thought I didn't think I wanted to be in the construction industry. When I was in middle school, high school, I wanted to be in film, director, production, stuff like that. And that's still something that's on my list, maybe in the future or maybe another life. But so, I didn't want to be in construction originally. And I kind of just walked into it and working for my dad, probably when I was 17. I went to college when I was 17. And I had decided the year before that, doing some management for him, that it was actually really fun. It was cool to see something like go from nothing and seeing a building come to fruition from your efforts and working with the team on the efforts and all of that stuff. So it was something really cool. And that made me go into business and continue working for him. I got out of construction when I was like 23, or I stopped working for him and I went into real estate with the goal of getting into development in the future. And so that I could kind of went into real estate to learn both sides, understanding the sales, the building, all of that stuff. then I came back, 2014. I started my first company with a partner, and I can tell that story here in a moment. But that from 2014 till now was 9 years of kind of great learning experiences. Learning a lot more about how construction works, but also learning how people work, how communication works, just a whole lot of everything.
Yeah. Well, I have a couple of questions just to go into a few more details before we go further.
Yeah.
Can you, if you don't mind, telling people how old you are and what size your business is now at this age?
Yeah. 33 years old. This business, Momentum Development, I started it after I sold out of my other company. Sold out is a relative term. I didn't get that much money for it. I kind of walked away. But
a successful exit.
It's a successful exit, and my old partner and I are still friends. We actually just talked yesterday, so it's a huge success in my mind. But I'm 33 years old. Momentum, I started it in late 2020. Started with a $1.5 million house. So we were doing, maybe $1.5 million a year for the first year. And last year we hit 8.9 million in 2022 with the goal of probably adding 50% to that. I was hoping to double that in 2023. And the way sales are shaping out, I think it'll be a 50% increase. So hopefully we'll hit around 13 to 15 million maybe.
I'm sure a lot of people will agree that's quite phenomenal, that growth.
I appreciate
to be able to
it.
achieve that. So congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
In
Appreciate
pretty
it.
exciting times. Hopefully you avoid the growing pains that a lot of businesses face.
Yeah, SYCB has helped a lot with that, and we can talk about that later. And I'm a big proponent of coaching in general. So I've not only spent a lot of money on coaching and just done a lot of coaching, but I've gotten a lot of return on investment from coaching throughout the years in life and business. So it's not all me, that's for damn sure.
Yeah, look, I've had the same experience, and growing up, I visualized athletes and stuff like that as role models, and if you think of it in that sense, every great athlete has had a coach help them through. And
yes,
there's no downside to it really, unless you have a bad coach. I guess there's
bad coaches kind of suck, but luckily if you get someone who's been doing it a little while, if they're a bad coach, hopefully they've worked themselves out of the job.
Just like anything else. Yeah. Yep. Makes, well, let's talk about the shift. So very similar. Like when I grew up, that was the reason I got into construction. Was the same thing, like walking out and seeing the job and going, hey, I built this. Like this was nothing and I built this. And I found that quite rewarding. And it was the same for me. Like when I finished school, I didn't really want to go to university and things like that. I did eventually when I was ready and wanted to actually knew what I wanted to do. But that feeling of actually, building something and delivering something, that is what got me stuck in construction from day one. So good to see 100%. That that's familiar for you. So I want to ask you, I guess, is going the other way, because I'm sure it has been a challenging 14, 15, 17 years, whatever you've been doing this for now. And what are the downsides, I suppose? Like how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for success? And do you have a favorite failure?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of failures. My favorite, worst, you could say, is a it's a bit of a long story, but it was so in 2014 when I started my first company that was just me. It was my own, not under my dad. I started it with my father-in-law. So this story it's meaningful to me. It's very tough to tell. And, but my goal is with this failure, I learned a ton about, everything from people to business to family and how you can come out on the other side of a failure and be successful. and move on with life, even though everything's not perfect. So I know a lot of listeners probably also are in business with family, or potentially are maybe going to buy a company from a dad or a father-in-law, something like that, or mother. So anyway, I started Avant Building Group, it was called, in 2014 with my father-in-law, and we were 50-50. We went into it. I did all the back end computer office stuff. He was mostly the site guy. It kind of started out with one job. We didn't really know what was going to happen with it. I was still doing real estate at the time, so we were kind of mixing and matching. And all of a sudden, we started hiring some employees. We started getting some more jobs. We did a couple spec houses, and everything was growing. And we were starting to make a little bit of money here and there. It became tough though, because my wife was basically like helped me on the office side. She did a lot of the bookkeeping, and she was very, very good at that. But having her in the business, me in the business, and her dad in the business, of course, family started to become a little stressful. Family holidays started to be us sitting at the dinner table talking about business, and it was fine, but the family didn't really like it.
The rest of the family, you mean?
Yeah, the rest of the family didn't really enjoy it, and it was, we kind of joke, but at the same time, like my wife's sister would say, "No more work talk," it's not what we're doing here.
They don't want to be a part of your board meetings. Basically.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it turned into, is board meetings at dinner when we're supposed to be having a family dinner. And we were going over, we were having dinner with them and having family time with them pretty often, which was fantastic. And so it started to get a little stressful also. And like I said, this is not meant to be a cautionary tale. This is meant to be a report on what I learned. So I hope this doesn't come across as pointing the finger, because I take 100% responsibility for this apparent failure. I do not point the finger at my father-in-law, but some of the things that happened, my wife and him had some disagreements that led to them not talking over the business and over he and I's partnership. So they didn't talk for about a year. And I had to continue the business with him while my wife was not talking to him. And that's stressful in a lot of different realms. I mean, for her, it's terribly stressful because it's her dad. And their relationship may not have been perfect. No one's really is. But that being said, still very stressful on her front. Also stressful for her to see me having to continue to work with him on the day-to-day, which was very difficult. So that happened, and I basically, at that time, I started to bring up, I think this was 2017, I started to bring up the conversation with him that I thought we needed to figure out a way to change the paradigm, move in different directions, something. And the conversations didn't go very far. So finally, I believe it was early 2018, I basically presented him a page that said, "Hey, all right, I think this has to happen. I think we need to split up. And there's 3 options. You can buy me out, I'll buy you out, or we can dissolve." And we had a giant project. At the time, we thought it was only going to be a $5 million project. It ended up being a $10 million project. We were only like a third of the way through it. So that was a big sticking point. I didn't want to leave the clients without a builder. I didn't want to leave, I didn't want to leave the employees. We had like 12 or 15 employees by that point. I didn't want to screw everyone over. So dissolution was not an excellent option in my mind.
Before you go ahead, can I just ask,
please,
how far into starting the business did this breakdown start happening? And what was the root cause? Because the reason I'm asking is there's obviously, there's plenty of people that are our clients and people that listen to the podcast that are either in a partnership with a family member or a friend, or a partner has now become a family member or has become a friend, sort of thing, right? So I'm sure plenty of people have at some point experienced what you have. And I'd like to hear a bit more about what you think led to the breakdown starting to happen. Because look, I own my business with my wife, and we've been together for 13 years, and it's
congratulations. That's a long time.
And the business is what we bicker over, or it is a cause of stress in our relationship. We literally don't argue about anything else. We're really good about communication, right? So I can see how with most of these partnerships that could happen, and I'd like to find out why it started, I guess, in your business, and at what point.
Yeah. So I guess why is probably part of some of the key takeaways from this failure and hopefully it leading to future success. But communication, like you just said with your wife, I was not able to say what I thought. We were in a position where I was young. He was older and experienced.
You were like 23, 24.
Yeah, I was only 20. Yep, I was 24. And then this all transpired. The breakup transpired when I was 28.
Yep.
So it was communication. It was that I couldn't come to the table and be direct with him with what I thought. I was scared he would discount my wants, my feelings, whatever it was.
And that was the overall vision, like the future?
Yeah, it was vision, future, how we deal with clients. Honestly, it was everything. What do we do with money? How do we grow? I mean, everything seemed like a point of contention. And we'd come to an agreement, everything would be good, and we'd be awesome for a couple weeks, and then we'd find something else that just we couldn't agree on. And he would really, stick his foot down and say, nope, this is how I think it needs to go. And I didn't have the nuts to say that, no, this has to change and this is what has to happen. And I let it. The problem with me is back then I was afraid to be direct, and I let it fester, create resentment, all of that stuff, which then turned into, an explosion essentially.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that I exploded. It was like I let the entire situation blow up, and it blew the company and our life up for a couple years.
Could I take a stab in the dark here? I'm assuming you weren't direct with your father-in-law, but you probably spoke to your wife about it. So part of your wife's challenge was that she was seeing what's going on with you. Is that what made her more frustrated?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a point of frustration because I think she probably felt powerless to do anything about it. And if she did, not only was she going against her own family to support me, which she did in a huge way, but that put her in a really tough decision because I'd come home and I'd bicker. And I mean, shit, we had 2 years of dinner table conversation was about how terrible things were at work and me just bitching and moaning about it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty victim-y on my part and not taking responsibility. And that's, and that all is something that comes with experience and learn and going through these failures to come out on the other side to say, you know what, I'm never going to be a victim again.
Yep.
And taking responsibility for my own actions. Communication's a big part. The other second part of that answer, I think, is filling a void in my life where I thought I had a weakness. So one of the biggest things that I have found is that now that I have more confidence, I am open to a partner coming into my company. I'm actually working on using the SYCB program to get the company to a point where it's either saleable or I can let employees buy in or something like that. I'm open to that. But before, and the reason I got into a second partnership after that explosion is because I was trying to fill a void or a weakness of mine with someone else. And everyone has weaknesses. No one's perfect. And so if you're out there trying to fill that void, with someone else or bringing in a partner because you think you have a weakness. For me, maybe that works for someone. That didn't work very well for me both times. That's why I did it with both partners. And it didn't work out well. And now I've learned to have the confidence and ability to move forward without having to lean on someone else. Besides my wife, I lean on her a lot.
I mean, we all do, mate. We can't. Yeah, we won't like, and you know, that's an important thing you brought up. Like I've said it before, and I'm sure you'll agree. There's no way I would have achieved the things I have in my life if my wife didn't have my back. And you know, and we spoke about coaches, but like going one step behind, if I didn't have my wife there when we have those down days and stuff like that, and you know, she inspires me more than anyone else. I'm sure from what I've heard from you, similar things as well. So
100%.
It's important to admit that. But so I want to ask, what was the weakness or what was the void? What were your concerns that you couldn't handle by yourself that you sought partnership for?
Yeah. So confidence in dealing with the site stuff. For me, it was the confidence in dealing with the gruff construction on site. Like I didn't feel like I fit in. Mm-hmm. And so when I could hide behind a computer, I was really good at talking to clients. I was really good at sales. I was pretty good at real estate, like that kind of thing. Talking with subs and stuff like that. There were some that just I couldn't figure out a way to connect with them. So it was very hard for me to communicate with them. Right. And that's a big void that I was filling. And it, you know, it didn't help that when that void did get filled by a partner, it actually exacerbated the issue and made it even more apparent and made me feel less and less confident because I was seeing them do it. And they were telling me like, yeah, you can't do this. I can do this. Yeah. And I let that happen. So that's probably the biggest void that I had. And that I think we'll get, you know, we can talk about it a bit later, but that's part of the code that I feel like I've cracked in my business for me and for the business is understanding those relationships and finding a way to use my strengths to not fill voids, but like make it so there's not a void there. Even if I'm not very good at that void, I can find another way to fill it in my own, you know, my own way of doing it.
Hey, it's Todd. We'll get back to the episode in just a minute, but let me ask you something. Have you ever signed a contract and then everything starts to feel a little bit chaotic? Questions fly around like, who's ordering what? When does the job actually start? Is the team ready? Did anybody order this material? Has this been approved yet? Project starts to feel like a fire drill, right? Well, the biggest problem in most construction businesses isn't a lack of effort. It's not the people. It's not the projects. It's not the clients. It's not you. It's the gaps in your process. Gaps where details fall through the cracks, where nobody's sure what to do, who's doing what, when it gets done, and you, the owner, end up filling in all those gaps, right? When there are questions, who they got to call? If there's a problem, it's going to land in your lap. And the biggest gap is pre-construction. And the solution is simple. Nailing the handoff from sales to construction. Nail the handoff from the office to the field. Your projects are like a relay race, and there's a baton that needs to be handed off. Nailing the handoff is a well-designed pre-construction process that closes those gaps, eliminates the chaos, and gives you back control. It gives you back the time so you can work on the business instead of being buried in it. And we can help you build that process. The first step is to book a free business evaluation call with our team. On your business evaluation call, here's what we're going to help you do. Spot the real gaps that are creating the chaos, show you how to nail the handoff and how doing that will put you back in control of your business. We'll even uncover some of the hidden profit that's already in your business. And if it makes sense, we'll talk about how we can help you build a business that runs without you. Click the link in the show notes to schedule your call. Be advised, we only have a few spots available each week, and not everybody qualifies for this call. This is not for everybody. So if you have a wave of work coming at you, or you're planning on growing and hiring people, now's the time to close those gaps with a good pre-construction process. If you're ready to stop reacting and finally take control, this is your next step. Go book your free business evaluation call with my team today.
And look, to be honest, some of that is, like you said, just time and experience. Because
It is.
on a parallel, like I was an employee in my 20s, and I just pushed and pushed and pushed my career, and I had the same experience. But I'm a carpenter by trade. I had no issues with site. It was the other way. It was the office stuff, and so the approach that I took was like, hey, I know everything about site, but this is something that's new to me, and I'm scared of this. And my response was just to be more assertive and more aggressive, and trying to push boundaries to get things done, which I wouldn't have been a pleasant person to work with. But I remember, like, when I became a project manager when I was 25, I think, quite young. For other people that are out there, like, my aim was to be a project manager by the time I was 40. So for me to hit that at 25, it was well and truly ahead. And I just worked hard and did what I needed to do. But I remember me doing a health and safety brief on one of our sites, and there was like 80 people there. And I was this young 25-year-old telling these guys who are 40 plus,
telling everyone what to do.
You need to do things safer. So, but that's just something that's changed with time. And I think you'll experience that too. As you come to a certain age, people find you a lot more credible. And it's not that people didn't believe in you when you were younger. It's just that you were young. That's it. Like, people are just like, you just got to give it time. So that's good. So
I used to joke about wanting to get that touch of gray hair stuff and put a little bit of touch of gray in the side of my head when I was younger.
Well, I'm lucky in the fact that I look older than I actually am. I feel like that's helped me out.
That's a good thing.
Yeah,
we're gonna call it a good thing.
Yeah. So let's come back to, you've presented your letter to your father-in-law. You didn't want to dissolve the business, and
so, and I'll try to give the condensed version, but we went back and forth. We ended up talking to the accountant. We had to figure out a way to come up with a price for the company, because the offer was, I don't care who stays in the company, you or me. It seems to me the company needs to stay going to support these people, all of this stuff. And I said, I'll buy you out or you buy me out. We come to the same agreement. And then I even told him, I said, you go ahead and decide, and I'll do whatever you want. And so we spent probably 6 months going back and forth on it, which was not a really pleasant 6 months. There was a lot of tension, and we went back and forth on the price and how the financials looked and what a company's actually worth. And the thing is I know it's a little different for you over in Australia, but in Montana, I mean, you were telling me the other day about the regulation you have and all the stuff you got to go through. Yeah. I mean, it's straight up Wild West out here, man. Like, we have good building science and people who are good at building. We try to educate ourselves and make sure that we have super solid building science. But to get into construction, it's a $73 registration fee, no test, no nothing. You fill out a little paperwork and you can be a general contractor in Montana.
Yeah.
So $73 to do that. And I'm sitting here debating with my father-in-law on a company that's only 3 years old. And I think we had gotten to the point where we were doing like 2.5 million a year. And we came to $125,000 was the amount. And I thought it was a little ridiculous because $73, I'd go start my own.
Yeah.
But the entire idea behind this deal was to keep the family together and to try to relieve that issue that we had so that we could go back to being a family. And so he decided he wanted to be bought out. My wife and I collateralized our house. We wrote him a check, and we went on with the business. He also, to be fair, he's I think he was 50, must have been like 59 at the time, 58. He's a go-getter. He didn't want to stop working. So he was like, well, I don't want to go work at like the lumber store or something like that just for something to do. He was like, I want to keep working here at this. I know the people here. And he's like, so I want to be an employee. And I was like, really? Okay. We figured out a deal that worked for him. And then within 2 months, I got a call from an architect that he was out looking to try to get a job so that he could leave, like get a big building job so he could go start his own company, because we didn't have a non-compete on the deal.
Nice.
So yeah, and that's and it's, it's nothing against him. I'm not pointing the finger at him. He was looking out for the best that he could do for his family, and we're all just, one of the key takeaways is we're all just doing the best we can. So and unfortunately in that situation, his best and my best didn't align, and so when I caught wind of that, I had to have him come into the office and I had to fire him, and so that was essentially the end of our relationship. They haven't talked to us since, except for through lawyers. We just had we have a 2-year-old daughter, and they haven't met her yet.
Wow.
So it's very tough. And, my wife going through that, it's terrible for her. And I appreciate every day the support that she gives me.
Yeah.
We lost her family over it. But then you look at the takeaways. And where have we gone now? And yes, hopefully one day we'll maybe rekindle that relationship. We'll start talking, and maybe we'll go back to that, which is a hope of mine. But the key takeaway for today, like you said, is there's people who are listening who maybe are in family-based businesses. Mm-hmm. And this is probably one of the biggest fears of a family-based business.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
it all came true for me. It was terrible, but you come out on the other side better, and hopefully, hopefully everything will work out, and we'll talk with them one day, and the love will come back, and all we can do is take the apparent failure and turn it into a success and learn from it. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, mate, that's truly horrible to hear. And I'm sorry that you guys have to go through that. Hopefully you do get your family back one day.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely.
You've said it before.
I have faith that will happen.
Yeah, I know you've said it before that you're open to reigniting that conversation. So hopefully your father-in-law is listening to this and gets in touch and see how we go. But, I do want to ask, so you're right, there's probably plenty of other people that are either already in that position or are considering that, and their biggest fear is probably not so much to do with the business itself, but what happens if things don't work out to our relationship or to our friendship. So what I don't know whether not entering into a partnership at all is the best decision or the best option that some people have. So what would you suggest for people who are in a family partnership or a friendly partnership or are considering getting into one? What would you recommend for them to put in place to make sure that, first of all, it's a healthy partnership and avoid it breaking down? And let's say that partnership does break down. What are some protections that they could put in place to ensure that business remains separate and that they don't lose their family if something doesn't work out?
I mean, it sucks talking about it at the beginning of a partnership, and that's why we didn't really have it, and it came back to bite us. But a partnership agreement is an absolute necessary thing, and it's all in writing. And a boilerplate one that you're going to get from a lawyer, it just doesn't have all the stuff. So you want to sit down with your lawyer and say, hey, can we please look at every scenario and not leave it to chance? Because what I found is, we didn't have anything in writing, so it totally screwed us. But even my next partnership that I went into, we did get it in writing. We're both in agreement about getting it all handled. But the partnership agreement that we had was pretty vague. And it basically said if you have issues and it gets down to the point where you're getting legal involved to solve your issues, you're going to hire a third party to figure out the the amount for the business or the value of the business. You're going to hire an arbitrator or a mediator to come in, which is all good stuff, but it left a lot of uncertainty. And I guess you have to plan ahead for the possibility that things will go bad. And it's tough saying that, because in marriage, I'm not a believer in a prenup. Maybe I'm lucky. My wife and I started with like literally nothing, and we built it together.
Yep.
So it's not even a question. But if you came into a marriage with a lot of money and the other person didn't, I'm not sure. I've never been in that situation. I won't be in that situation. But so I can't say one way or another. But I can say in a business partnership, having everything discussed on the front end is the only way that I can see to make it manageable if things go another direction. The next part is the mindset of, I said when things go bad, and that's actually the wrong mindset. In my opinion, the other part of partnerships is sometimes people just want to exit. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at my company going, wow, like this is pretty cool. If I get it to the point where I want it to be like, I think I want to stay involved for a long, long time, just because I really like it. And I like what we built, and I like what we do. Like we said, like seeing things grow and go from raw to finished product.
Yeah.
But I will happily be doing a partial exit here at some point. And that the thing is that's like a happy exit, but you still have to have the agreement on how that works, because even if you're happy to do an exit, it gets really unhappy if you have to argue about it.
Yeah. And also what your involvement is after your exit. That's black and white. Because the reason I bring that up is because there's obviously plenty of generations swapping hands. So, a parent making that exit and their son or daughter taking over the business and being accountable for actually running it. But then the parent will come back in and go, no, let's do it this way. So I do agree, like it's ideal to have that in black and white as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Very similar to a building contract, right? It's the same as when you enter a contract with a client.
Absolutely. You're going to build a house. They're going to pay you. There's probably some gray area in between that hopefully your contract has management for. And then the biggest thing that I see is, yes, you can have everything written down on paper, and when the time comes, you will have to go back and reference that paper.
Yep.
And I mean, that I guess, and taking a quick step back, for someone who say is like in a business with their father or their father-in-law, and they're coming in, especially ones where the father has built a business and maybe a son or son-in-law is coming in and starting to take over. That's something where you really, really, really want to have the conversation on the front end. And the problem is it's really hard to do.
Yep.
Because you've got this new shiny thing and you're all excited about the partnership. And it's like, this is going to be so fun. And you don't want to talk about when things could go awry.
Yeah.
Or talk about like with parents, and I only know this because I dealt with it, but like a lot of those guys, I see it a lot in the construction industry, that don't want to leave. They want to, like, I remember my father-in-law very specifically, and I'll be the first one to say he told me this up front, and I should have believed him, because then I would have made a better decision. But he basically said his goal was to be like the old guy in the company who just drove from job site to check in, 3 days a week and just hang out and kind of be a part of the company. But along with that, the things that are not being said is also getting paid for doing that, right? Yeah. So understanding like what's a parent going to do, what's their retirement plan, is you coming into the business, taking it over, is that their retirement plan? And when you take over the business and they're not working anymore, are you okay with that? And have you agreed upon how you're going to come to that dollar amount?
Yep.
Because that's the point where I see it becoming a problem for families. when you have an older person going out and their retirement is dependent on the success of this company, and they have a certain dollar amount that they want.
Yep.
And then I'm a millennial. I sometimes hate to say it, but if we're talking stereotypes, millennials coming in are like, well, hell no, I don't want to pay this and this and this if I'm doing all the work, right?
Yeah.
And so those are the things that just have to be decided upon up front. And it needs to be, it doesn't need to. I would invite everyone to think about that future before jumping into something. And it doesn't mean don't do it. It just means have a consideration, and unlike I did, have the balls to have the conversation.
I think it's probably best to think of it as just a business partner. So how would you start that relationship if it wasn't a family member, if it wasn't a friend? How would you do that? And yeah, you're exactly right. Most people don't want to think of the downsides. And it's just like a building contract. Like the piece of paper is there in the event that things don't work out. It doesn't mean that that piece of paper dictates your relationship. It just means that things fall apart, and it protects both parties, right? It's never just one person. And, you mentioned your wife and your marriage, and we don't have a prenup either. We don't really believe in that. But very early on in our relationship, we purchased an investment property together. And this was in our early 20s. And we do actually have a signed contract going into that investment. And we haven't, ever since then, there's nothing else, right?
Yeah.
That very first thing, it was about us trusting each other, but it's still an investment. So what happens if, it's not nice to think about, but what happens if we break up? What happens if one of us dies? What happens if, the relationship just gets sour? You then come back to this piece of paper, and we'd even agreed on that paper that this is a long-term investment. So even if we break up, this is in our both our best interest at this stage. Similar to a building company, you want to enter that partnership knowing that the equity and the investment, your responsibility to your employees shouldn't just take a second step because you guys are quarreling, right? So you want to protect that as a separate entity itself. Yeah. So,
and one thing, if I may add to that, everything you just said and your question before, how do you garner against these issues that I went through with my family? And it's communication. It's just talking about it. It's like, it's almost having an agreement on the front end. I mean, one of the things you and I have talked about, I'm a big believer in traction and the, entrepreneur operating system. And part of what SYCB coaches is weekly meetings. And we didn't do those. If you have a weekly leadership meeting with that person where you come to the table and you know that everyone is going to be brutally honest and polite at the same time, then you know that you're probably not going to run into this problem because you're going to be talking about it before it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
And so then, you still got to have the contract there, but it almost doesn't become an issue. And I find the same thing with clients in building. If you are the one who's pushing, I think I heard you say on one of your podcasts something about your people like pushing forward to communicate with the clients before the clients call them.
Yep. Being proactive. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Like you will never have to open the contract once throughout the building process if you talk.
Yep.
And if you're proactive. And that's a similar thing in partnerships in my mind. But it means being direct. It means being honest. And it means, I believe Brene Brown says clear is kind.
Yep. And it's just setting that expectation, right? Like regardless of it being a business partner or an employee or a client or whoever else, it's okay for two people to want two different things. It's about knowing, what is it that the other person wants and that it's different to what I want. And let's agree on some mutual ground. But let's do that proactively instead of us finding out 2 years in that, hey, no, that's not what I wanted. And That's not what you want.
It's actually not what I wanted. And I knew that from the beginning. I just didn't tell you.
Yeah. So yeah, communication and doing, like my wife and I, and you've done that too. The strategic planning guide that we do for SYCB, we did that together and we found out that our visions were completely different. Not completely different, but what we envisioned was two different things. And so we agreed to meet in the middle instead of one of us pushing the agenda without clarifying exactly what we're after. So yeah. Well, all right. Well, let's talk about success then, I suppose, and tell us what is something you believe to be true about business that some might think is unconventional, maybe even crazy.
Yeah. I heard a quote just a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I think my wife told me it was a coaching program that she had, and I don't remember what it was called, so I apologize for not giving credit, but your greatest strength can become your greatest weakness when overused. And, myself included, I think most of us go into it thinking our strengths are our strengths. Like, we're going to go kick ass and take names on these things.
Yeah.
And you find out that it can be overused. And that's one place, you and I talked about culture index. You can all kinds of different personality tests. Culture index is the one that we like to use in our business. It basically brings to light the fact that no one is perfect. Everyone, it's just not possible for a human to have 100% of the quote unquote good traits, right? We all have ways that we go about life, and we're all different. And that includes strengths and weaknesses. And when one of those strengths is overused, it becomes overbearing. It becomes not that useful. And so figuring out ways to temper that and to understand and be aware of it. That's probably the biggest one for me, is just having an awareness of strengths and weaknesses, being okay with them, and then having the awareness to see when one or the other is taking over and becoming overbearing.
Well, you've given us, it's interesting. You're quite self-aware, and you've mentioned your weakness and the reason to fill the void with that weakness with a partner and things like that. So could you give us a couple of examples of how you mean with your strengths and that causing issues?
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, one of mine. So, I'll kind of reference some culture index or personality. You could call it personality test examples. But for me, I am a high risk, high autonomy, high social. I enjoy talking to people and working with people, but I have very, very low conformity, it's called, and that's transfers to follow through, following the rules, for example. And so for me, a strength is taking the risks. I'm not crazy high on that, so I'm not super outspoken, but I like to go do sales. I like to go communicate. I like to go push, and a lot of the times I find that, and this is kind of vague, but I find myself throwing too much creativity or blasting too much creativity in one direction for the receiver to handle.
Right.
And I, too many ideas, too much dreaming, basically. And so
classic visionary.
Yeah, classic visionary. And so my wife is freaking good at it. It took us 10 years, but she knows how to temper it now.
My wife just ignores me, mate. So maybe that's what you're
exactly. That's great. And luckily, she sometimes ignores me. Yeah, but so that's one. And basically, I guess what I'm getting at with that is everyone has their greatest strength, and it can become a weakness if it goes the other way. So if I'm blasting too many people with too many ideas, all this stuff, or if I'm talking to someone who doesn't think the same way as me, just because I yell it louder or I say it more, it's not going to get through. So finding other ways to understand what my strengths and weaknesses are, and finding ways to communicate those, keeping in mind someone else's strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
So the other weakness that I have, I don't even know if I'd call it a great strength, but I have the problem, which I think many GCs who are in the beginnings of their business and don't have a ton of people to do stuff for them, they think they're the only one who can do it perfect. And 100% me, I literally lay awake at night thinking like, God, if I don't go to the site and I don't check this thing, like, it's not going to get done. Yeah. And I want so badly for that to go away.
Yeah.
And so that's, I have a strength of the fact that I've been around building enough and I have a good enough eye that I can see all this stuff. But then I lay awake at night thinking about it because I don't trust that anyone else can do it, even though they absolutely can.
Yeah. That's, again, another visionary type personality trait, isn't it?
Yeah,
like you,
100%.
You're
100%.
aiming for perfection every time and you see the vision. But part of it, as you mentioned, is how you communicate that vision to your team and how they communicate back to Jake, being like, yep, we're on board. We're on the same page. We know exactly what you're talking about. So I think that's quite common, to be honest. A lot of people end up micromanaging because of that. They think that's the only way. But, it's
100%.
just about proactively communicating and clarifying that expectation. So has that changed now, Jake? Or are you still laying awake at night?
We're getting there. We're getting there. I lay awake at night way less. I mean, I'll be honest, man. I've had some pretty good sleep the last 3 to 6 months. Like I don't have trouble falling asleep anymore. I am starting to be able to trust my team. Our main, most of our work is about an hour-long drive from our office. And this week, usually I go to site only once a week. And so far things are working out pretty well with that. This week we had office meetings all day on my usual day to go up. So by next Tuesday, it'll be 2 weeks since I've been to the site. And I have faith that everything is going great. And I've talked to my super and all that stuff. I know where things are at. And I know the other part for me is I have started to become aware. I've become more aware of that micromanagement and that want for perfection. And I, just by being aware of it, I found that helps me temper it. And knowing that not everything's going to be perfect. I know like in the last couple of weeks, I think we had a 4-day slippage in schedule on 3 large units. And it's because we didn't have our scheduling meeting for 2 weeks in a row with my super. And like, so it was actually a total blessing in disguise because now I know how important that meeting is, because I thought maybe no one was listening when we were doing those meetings and it didn't matter, but I now know how important that meeting is. And it also gives me faith that as long as I'm spending a small amount of time helping keep people on track and making them accountable for them staying on track and me just kind of setting up lanes and creating guidance, everything's moving ahead really well. And I sleep at night.
Are you feeling a bit rejected because you found out you're actually a lot less needed than what you thought?
It's not quite there, but it's close actually. Last 2 weeks ago, last Tuesday, week and a half ago when I was up on site, I went there, my super was running some errands. I just went around and I talked to all the subs. I answered 0 questions. I just talked life with them and just said hello and joked around with everyone. I went back to the office trailer and sat down and my super comes in. I was like, hey man, so from now on, when I come to the site, my intention is that I'm not going to talk to subs about questions or what's happening. I'm just going to come in and look and make sure that everything directed at you. And he was like, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I'm sure he was like, I've been wanting to tell you that for 6 months, man. Like, leave, get out of here.
That takes a bit of getting used to, because I had the same experience, and people wanted me out of the way. I just didn't realize that. And
you're gumming it up, man.
What's that?
were gumming it up, man.
Yeah, pretty much. You're muddying the waters every time you go there. And it's hard because you go to site, or let's say I go to site and I see things and I'm like, hey, I wouldn't be doing it that way. I'd be doing it a different way. But that's just my way. But my team is very capable, and we've never had issues with how they've done things. Clients always happy. The subcontract, everything's worked. But the issue is me, right? I go to site and I go, I wouldn't do it this way. And all of a sudden I've changed how they would do things, which isn't ideal. As long as you're getting the same results, it doesn't matter how you do it.
Exactly.
So yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to. I go to site during their lunch breaks and I just discuss life and then I'll leave. And they prefer that as well.
I'm out. See ya. I'm a lot happier that way, because otherwise, if I get too into it, man, I get all like, life, the world's ending because this thing wasn't perfect. And oh my God, how do I grow a construction company? It's impossible because no one can do it the way I want them to.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the past couple months that has started to subside.
That's good. Well, it's good to hear you sleeping better. Hopefully that can continue as
100%.
well. And so, all right, well, tell us what is one specific part of your business that's working well for you? What something you feel like you were saying before that you've cracked the code on?
So I referenced that back to the failure piece because relationships is the biggest thing that I feel like I've cracked the code on. And what's so interesting is what I told you, the void that I was trying to fill, the talking with the subs, the on-site management, communicating on-site. I found that I personally can bring compassion to construction, and people have appreciated it very much. I have a different way of communicating in construction, and all my subs, I know every single one by name, even though I'm only on the site once a week. I know all the guys who work with them. I'm friends with a lot of the owners of the companies that we use. And that has led us to be a team of only 5 people. And last year hit an 8.9 million in revenue. It's a lot of work for not very many people. And it's because we have a fantastic team and a fantastic team of subs. And I think it's because of the relationships that we've created. And in my business, the culture that we are trying to create is 100% relationship based. Employees that come in, if that's not how they work, they're not going to fit here very long. Just more family based, life based, compassion based communication in relationships has been the thing that has gotten me to where I am so far.
And could I ask you to give us a couple of examples of what specific things you're doing to cultivate those relationships and actually getting these results? Because I'm sure who you are as a person and the type of conversations you have does that. But to transition that personality to a business and to the culture of the business, there has to be things that you're doing, right?
Yeah. So I mean, really, there's a couple pieces of it because I'm still working on some. There's some very specific items that I am working on that we haven't implemented yet. I mean, there's even things where like spring every year we want to get on the agenda, renting out one of the event centers here in Bozeman and inviting all of our preferred subs and the main guys that work on our jobs to have food, go bowling, or like do something fun that everyone's like really appreciative of. I find that mostly it's subs who are having parties and inviting GCs because that's where they get the work, and it's kind of a promotional event for them. And I want to switch the paradigm and create events or opportunities for me and my team to connect with our subs on a more on a more non-work basis. So that, and one way we're still working on kind of coming up with some of that stuff this summer. My goal is like half days on Fridays, not every Friday, but half days on Fridays to take a lot of the people who are on site out on the boat and go surfing, things like that. And then the other part of it, not having those in place yet, the other piece is just taking the time to talk to them. Like, it takes a lot of time out of my day, but when I call like my electrician, Steve, fantastic dude. Every conversation's at least 20 minutes long because we're not talking about work the whole time. It's checking in to see how life is going and how's work been going. Like, are you getting enough rest? Are you, all this stuff, like, and it comes down to care. And I when I went back to look at my strategic planning guide, I always say that, but I wrote it down in a way that hit me a little more. But it's just, I want a team who actually cares about the product they're doing, people they're working with, and that care goes so far.
And that care is probably, especially in the current market where there's so much demand, so much work, but very few people to actually deliver that. It's probably making you the GC of choice for most of these subs because they'd rather work with someone they like and cares about them instead of saying yes to any opportunity that comes their way.
Absolutely. Yep. And I'd say that's really, my team of subs is the reason that we are able to accomplish a large amount of work, and getting those subs is because of the relationships we've created. My competitors that work in the current development we're working on, they have a minimum of 300 employees. They're gigantic. They can take on a hell of a lot more work than I can, but we're coming in and taking small pieces of the pie because a lot of the subs who those big guys call are like, yeah, no, we don't want to come do that project for you. And then I call them and I'm just down the street and they're like, oh yeah, we'll come do that one for you.
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of how that's how it's been working out for us. Taking some time, taking some care, and showing gratitude. Yeah.
And it's probably an enjoyable part of your day. I know you said it takes a fair bit of time, but you probably would rather call Steve the electrician instead of doing an estimate or something.
All day long. And I need more people to do estimates for me at the moment.
Whereas there's obviously estimators out there.
Steve.
There's obviously estimators out there that would prefer to not talk to people and just dig into their Excel spreadsheet and work through all day. So,
as you said, strengths and weaknesses, man. Everyone is different and everyone's good at different stuff. And we just have to find a way to put them all together and put people in the seat that they want to be in. The seat that helps them wake up in the morning and get excited about coming to work because they're fulfilling their passion and their traits and all of that stuff. Not fulfilling mine, fulfilling theirs.
Yeah. And I'm going to add to that. Part of that is also realizing what is your job. You want to have the same sort of enjoyment and passion and everything in your career. So for people that are wearing 10 different hats in their business, it's something to think about. You're probably not good at doing certain things. There's other people out there that will come in and do it a lot better. It's better off to just delegate. And the reason I'm saying that is you've got 5 people and you're doing 9 million. There's other businesses out there that have got 5 people and they're struggling to break the $1 million barrier, right? And a big part of it is obviously figuring out what am I good at? What do I need to narrow down to and focus on? What does person B need to narrow down and focus on? And then obviously the relationships with subcontractors and everything as well, because although you're 5 people, you're probably 80 people plus if you count all your subcontractors.
Shameless plug, SYCB helps figure that out.
Thanks, mate. Well, so the next thing I want to ask you, if someone told you I'm planning to start my own business and you could ask them one question they really need to think about, what would it be?
All right, I have 3 answers to this. I'll start with one, and then if we have time, we can go into the others.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I'm going to start. I want to give you 2. First one is your spouse on board? Because if they're not, you're starting in the wrong path. And you got a losing battle ahead of you. The other one, that's a bit bit deeper is how much failure or rejection are you capable of accepting without it stopping you from taking your next step forward?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I hear from every entrepreneur. It's what I hear, sales guys get it a lot, but every entrepreneur, how much rejection can you handle? Because the person who can handle the most rejection will probably be the most successful, because you have to fail to hit your success.
Well, tell us a bit more about that. So obviously every business owner does go through that, and everyone does have a breaking point, but you can't just quit and give up and go and get another job, and you don't really want to go back. So how have you dealt with failures and rejection and still remained persistent and resilient and moved on? What's your strategy to manage that?
For me, it's a lot of mindset work. So I've done a lot of coaching, life coaching type programs, and they all come back to trying to have it all in life. So if you take life and you turn it into different divisions, we've got, let's say, body, your physical fitness, spirituality, your faith, whatever that might be, your family and friends, your relationships, and then your business. And as you start going through, it's so interesting. I feel like the rejections get bigger and bigger, and they hurt a lot more as they get bigger. But then after you push through a couple of those rejections, the wins are also just as big. And so I guess it's mindset. I think finding ways for me to do in my life, when I go back to the 4 divisions, focusing on fitness, focusing on having a body that's, my temple to be, and
healthy body is a healthy mind.
Healthy body, having a vehicle that's going to help me accomplish what I want to accomplish. Meditation, mindset, things like that. That helps handle rejection, because you start to know yourself better and you can move more internally. And so the rejection doesn't really hurt when you're all internal. So I have found that meditation, focusing on my family, focusing on my body, my faith, those are all ways that I have found to handle rejection, because now I don't take it personally.
Yeah.
It's just something, it's just another step in the road. It's like, it's not even a barrier anymore. It's just like, okay, well, that one didn't work. We're at a Y. We're going to go right instead of left, because left didn't work.
Yeah.
And it takes a long time to build that resilience. But when you focus on every part of your life instead of, like, say, just the business, it hurts a lot less. Here's a more practical example. So my old partner used to say this, the partner after my father-in-law, he was like, we need more leads. We need more jobs, because let's say we have one job, now we are 100% dependent on that one client. And when we're dependent on that one client, every single rejection, every little misstep really hurts, because that client is your one and only. If you have 5 clients, if you have a little rejection or a little mishap with one client, it doesn't matter, because you're still getting paid from the other ones, and you'll figure out a way to, you're going to be in a better mind space anyway. So the solid chance is you're going to figure out that rejection with that client and move past it in an amicable manner. And when I fill my day, not just with like, this has to work in business, this has to happen, if I get rejected, this is the end of my day. I fill my day with working out, meditation, spending time with family. I have so many wins during the day that a rejection is not really a big deal. I guess that's the best way to put it that I could think of.
Hey, it's Todd. We'll get back to the episode in just a minute. If you're thinking about growing your construction business, maybe you've been wondering things like, how do I know if my business can handle more work without falling apart? Is now the right time to grow, or should we just stay where we're at? Am I missing something that could blow up if I scale too fast? Do I have the right structure in place to support growth and to be able to grow safely? Maybe you're worried about burning out your team or burning out yourself. You're worried about winning more work, but then losing control of the quality and having that hurt your reputation. Maybe you're concerned about getting stuck in more chaos, having more problems instead of having more freedom, or finding out too late that your systems just weren't strong enough to handle the growth. Well, here's what's surprising. A company studied why successful contractors fail, and they found out two things. Number one, contractors don't starve to death. They get too much work too fast with inadequate resources, and then they run out of cash. The second thing that they learned after studying a couple of hundred successful contractors that failed is that contractors are actually more likely to go bankrupt during a growing economy than during a downturn. So how do you know if your business is ready to scale? How do you know when it's time to hire more team members, to go after another market, to sell more work? Well, that's a big question that a lot of people are grappling with. It's a question I get a lot. So that's why I created an assessment tool to help you answer the question, is your construction business ready to scale? This assessment is free, it's online, and you'll get a customized report showing exactly where your business is strong and where the hidden gaps are that could trip you up. It's the fastest way to get clarity before you put your business and your future at risk. So if you want to take the free assessment to find out, is your construction business ready to scale? The link is in the show notes.
So you've basically put a routine together that builds personal resilience. So when there's a rejection, it's not that Jake's been rejected, it's that the idea or whatever, you're able to remain objective. So if I could ask, what does that routine look like? What are the things, because you're doing all this proactively, you're not doing it after you get rejected as damage control, right?
The damage control doesn't work very well. It's definitely a proactive thing.
Yeah.
For me, it comes down to doing all this stuff daily. And one thing I've found is if I had 3 hours in the morning to do a 3-hour morning routine, I would totally do it. It'd be awesome, but I don't. So
especially with a 2-year-old as well.
Yes, with a 2-year-old. Exactly. So it's like an hour. If I get up really early, it's an hour and a half, but it entails getting up sometime in the 5 o'clock hour, going out. I immediately like to go work out. A lot of coaches, a lot of people say get the hard stuff done first in the day because it creates a win. So I go work out. If I have my morning set up a couple times a week, I can hit the sauna. And then I have, over the past couple months, I've gotten super routine with doing a cold plunge, sitting in the cold water for a couple minutes after a workout. Not only has it helped my body with soreness and stuff like that, but it's helping you get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So that happens. And then, lately my wife has been taking most mornings with our baby. So that does help me a ton so that I can move ahead with the routine. But after that, I usually go in and help do a little bit of family time, try to see my wife and daughter for a bit, and then go start my day. And it took me a long time to push my day. Construction usually starts at 6 a.m. And 5 years ago, I'd be working out at 5 or 6, and I'd be texting and talking to people while I'm trying to work out.
Yeah.
Now, thank you to things like SYCB and me finding other people and figuring out some systems, I have the luxury of not really starting work until 9 a.m. So I get that not everyone can do that, and it's really hard. But if you can get in the habit of movement, doing something at the beginning of the day, it really sets up your day for success. And I do try to meditate within that routine as well. Lately, I haven't been so successful with hitting it every single day, but even a 10-minute meditation, there's a lot of science around it that talks about how it actually changes your brain waves and your frequencies, and you actually hold those frequencies throughout the entire day, which is incredible. So
by the time it's 9 a.m., you're actually primed to perform at your best, and nothing's going to at 9 or 5 a.m. if you get some sort of if a job doesn't go through, it doesn't pay you.
Exactly. I still have my bad days. I am far from perfect. There's there every now and then there's an email that can ruin my day, but it's a whole lot less often than it used to be.
Well, I want to ask you about that then. So what happens when you get an email like that? How do you then manage that? What does it?
Yeah, usually we'll put it this way. I would guess that if I got that email, let's say at 9:05, and we had an acquaintance or a friend of mine at the house, I'm guessing that friend would not be able to tell that I was unhappy. My wife can tell that I'm unhappy. So that's usually my best gauge is she can tell even sometimes before I can. So you already have all these wins. You get it. Let's say it's like a big rejection. Like, I mean, one morning I had a 7 a.m. This was a couple of months ago. I think I was working with you at the time. And I had a 7 a.m. call, and the biggest job of 2023 is a $30 million job got pulled from us at 7 a.m. And we'd been working on it, planning it for 8 months. And that was, my wife told me just the other day, and this was 4, 5, 6, no, this was like 6 or 8 weeks ago. My wife told me just the other day that that's the only time in the near past that she's seen me like actually angry. And, but what was so interesting is she could tell I was super unhappy about it, but I didn't feel like I was going to scream. And I would say that's probably largely due to the mindset work, the ability to see the other things in life that are going really, really well. And so to deal with that, usually, honestly, what I do is if it's really bad, maybe I'll go work out or something and then try to clear my head. But most of the time, if something comes up, I probably stew on it for 10 minutes, try to take a deep breath, maybe do a meditation or something like that. And then I jump right on solving it. And in that case, it was figuring out why the project failed. Why were they changing their minds? What can we do to change that? And immediately starting to call around to look at our other leads and say, okay, well, what's going to replace that?
So you actually attack the issue instead of dwelling on it and making yourself feel bad.
Perfect way to put it. Yes.
Yeah. And you're able to do it because you've done your workout and you primed your mind with meditation and things like that. That's really cool. I think and the reason I ask, everyone's got their own strategies on how they manage that stuff, but it's important to have that in place so you don't end up 2-3 days a week or whatever just feeling terrible, right? And and my thing and my gauge is my wife as well. She's able to tell sometimes better than I can that things start to come to her. And I've got a journal, and I find that is quite a handy tool for me because I think too quickly, I find. And it's easy to get stuck on a hamster wheel when if I start writing things down, slowing down into that linear pattern helps me resolve a problem and then put an action plan in place as to what needs to happen next and move on. So I'm glad you bounced back from that. I remember that conversation.
That's the one that hopefully it's kind of actually, I just got an email right before this. We had a meeting yesterday about that project. And that meeting led me to believe that we were good to go and it was coming back online. And then I just got another email that's kind of like bouncing back the other way. And I'm just like, you know what? It is what it is. It's going to come or it's going to go, and we're going to go find other stuff. So like you said, the more you go through this, the bigger the rejections get, but also the bigger the wins get. So it starts to make many of the rejections seem so small that they just don't matter.
Yeah. I think you basically have to, like you said, you have to get used to being rejected. I think it's actually a good thing because if you're being rejected constantly, it means you're actually trying. Whereas if you're playing it safe and just going, I'm just going to wait till someone just comes to me and gives me a job, drops it in my lap, it's not going to happen. That's not real world.
No. You know Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yep.
I mean, his book, what is it? Jab, jab,
I don't know him personally.
Right,
I should just say that.
I don't know him personally either. But his book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, I think is what it's called. I mean, that's his deal is like, you just keep going. You're going to land something soon. Like, take the rejection, just go on to the next one, go on to the next one.
Yeah.
So that's why people who work in door-to-door sales are so good at being salesmen, because they get rejected 8,000 times a week, and they're like, no big deal. Let's move on to the next.
Just brush it off and keep moving on.
Keep on going.
Yeah.
Walk to the next house.
Yeah. So let's talk about SYCB, or the Systematize Your Construction Business program, because you've obviously gone through it. You've shamelessly plugged it away a few times as well.
Got you covered, man.
You're obviously, quite an intelligent, successful, attractive guy yourself, and
thank you.
The business is going well. But I want to ask, what were the main problems you had that led you to join the Systematize Your Construction Business program?
Yeah, absolutely. So it was the time and the headache and the me thinking I needed to be a micromanager. I got sick of thinking I'm the only one who can do it, because I'm not. And I know that, but I fall into the same trap that everyone else does, that, you think you're the only one who can do it. So you got to do everything yourself. Like I said, I have a 2-year-old, and for the first year that we had her, I didn't realize it at the time, but I kind of kept my wife. She was a real estate agent, and she had a partner at the time. And so she had the luxury that she got to take, I think, 3 months off, and then she went back to work. But I felt like she made a lot more sacrifices than I did. And that first year, I don't think my life changed much, and hers definitely did. And finally, after a year, maybe 9 months or something, like, it started to become very apparent in our conversations, and something had to change. And so I was at the beginning of this new company, Momentum Development, after I had just gone away from my second partner at Avant. And let's see, I think the day she told me she was pregnant, I told my partner that I wanted out. And I'd been holding on to it for a little while because I didn't have a backup plan.
So her telling you she's pregnant led you to actually make the exit?
No, I said it before that. I told her that I pulled out, and she was like, "What the heck? Are you serious right now?" And then later that night, she tells me she's pregnant, and and it was like, I don't know.
Great timing.
It was like great timing. Yeah, good job, Jake. You got nothing to fall back on. Fantastic. So anyway, I didn't have much fallback on. We were building up Momentum Development because I didn't really have anything else to do, and I was kind of a one-man show, so I was doing everything. And my life didn't change. We had the baby. I kind of kept going, and it became apparent that I needed to scale back on work and be more present. It was presence that really got me. And I talk about the whole routine and mindset and meditation, and good God, I am so far from perfect on that stuff. Like, it helps with presence, but I have tons and tons of work to do on presence. So
was this because you were still stuck in that micromanaging and trying to do everything yourself?
Exactly. Yep. Trying to do everything myself, and not, I'd come home, I'd still be working. And I, got to the point where it was like, wow, I'm sitting here on my cell phone, texting while I'm holding my baby, and talking on the phone while I'm holding my baby, which has to happen every now and then, but it was all the time. And what was so interesting is, at the time, I thought I was being like some sort of hero. I mean, we're only talking, this was only a year ago. I thought I could do it all. I could be a dad, I could hold the baby, I could talk on the phone and all that stuff. Yeah. And after talking with my wife about it, and a couple months of really starting to become aware of it, I realized that that's actually not that cool, at least for me. Maybe it is for someone else, but for me, it really wasn't that cool. I was not giving my daughter or my wife the time and the presence that was required to have a relationship with them.
Yeah. So you were always engaged with work, even though you were physically with your family.
Exactly. So I would say that's probably the biggest piece that led me to be looking for some sort of coaching. And I stumbled upon SYCB from the podcast. Interestingly enough, it was one of your, how many podcasts have you done with Todd? 2 or more?
3, I think now.
3? Okay. I think it was one of your first ones I listened to, and I picked up the phone and sent in my request form right after the podcast. So that was kind of cool. And then it just so happened that you called me, and I was like, oh, I was just listening to you. So timing is divine. And yeah, that's really what did it for me.
Yeah. And, you know, I could feel the energy when I spoke to you as well, because I think we both kind of were as excited to speak to each other at that point.
Yeah.
And it's been great working with you as well. So, well, take us to the moment when you realized that your work in the SYCB program was actually working to solve your problem. Yeah.
The nail the handoff session. And I know that's probably almost everybody's answer. I'd love to be unique and have a different answer, but the session when everyone in my company actually showed up when I didn't think they were going to, and actually participated. Like the minute we got started, we jumped in, I started explaining it. It took me about 5-10 minutes to really like get the energy going. And all of a sudden, you know, we only have 5 of us in the meeting, but some of the most unlikely people just started railing out answers and like awesome ideas, and a new guy who we'd only had for a month, and he basically just sweeps the floors, brought some fantastic ideas.
Yeah.
It was that was a moment when I was like, oh, I don't have to be the one to do it all. And I still find myself falling back into that. After the Nail the Handoff program, I found myself filling out a lot of the checklists and stuff like that. And you were like, stop, delegate it. So, you know, no one's perfect. But I guess you could say as quickly as I possibly can, working toward delegating those items and letting others take ownership for their piece of the pie.
And if you can tell us what was it specifically about that session or after that session that made you genuinely feel like you don't have to do it all anymore?
Really, man? It was just the fact that these people were taking ownership of it. Like they were bringing ideas that they wanted to own. And I didn't feel like I had to be the only one in the company who actually owned the results of what we were trying to do. And I felt like I actually had a team who cared about what the end result was and how we got there.
Yeah.
So I wasn't the only one now. I wasn't on an island. So it was like all of a sudden I had all these people around me that were like, they were invested, they're in.
Yeah. Yeah. And let's be honest, they probably always were.
100%. I just didn't know it. That's totally my fault.
And so besides that session and, you know, that changing the ownership and the accountability within your business, what would you say was the most impactful or beneficial thing that you've learned from SYCB?
What I learned, all right, well, I always wondered, as I'm sure Todd kind of wondered when he started this business. I'm sure you were wondering, but why? I always wondered, like, why aren't construction companies franchised? And I think maybe there are a couple. I'm not really sure. But if someone actually came up with really good systems for a construction company, like, why couldn't I just go find them online and buy them and get them implemented, right? And I'd been struggling with that for so long, being like, there's got to be some better way to do this.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't find it. And SYCB answered my questions that there is not one size that fits all, even though I thought maybe there was. But finally, it was like, okay, someone else is like confirming that not one size fits all. And SYCB gave a framework for how to create those systems to then hopefully lead to freedom.
Yeah.
So honestly, it's not like it's not a done for you program. And I think hopefully most people know that, but it was something I had to see to come in and say, okay, here's this framework, but my business is so different than the guy next door to me.
Yeah.
And it's not a McDonald's. We're not making the same burgers every single day. Even if we do tract housing and we do the same house over and over again, man, like construction, just you're reinventing the wheel every single day.
Yeah.
So everyone has different reinventions of it. So you have to have different systems and you got to find your own.
Yeah. I think you've kind of hit it on the head there. It's definitely never going to be one size fits all. There's obviously stuff that you can buy and download for free and all that sort of stuff. But I think part of that comes back to, we spoke about the Jets trap, the doing just enough to start. And I feel like people that are doing that are downloading templates of being like, oh, this is just enough. And it's even to go one step beyond when you purchase software like Buildertrend, CoConstruct, Procore, and there's plenty others, but people think I'm going to go buy this and that's going to fix everything. It's going to resolve everything, but it doesn't quite work, right? It probably makes things worse when you go and do that.
I tried it so many times, man. I don't know how much money I've spent on trying to find easy ways to do this stuff, and it's not there. It's not there.
And
this is not an easy way, but this is a proactive and faster than doing it yourself. I mean, I think I heard someone else in the program talk about how it's like, okay, you got a 2-month program here. And what we learned in 2 months would take, 2, 5, 10 years to figure out on your own. Yep. So what's the small investment worth to you? How much time do you want to be able to grab?
And look, it's, you're definitely right. It's not a done for you system. It's like, as you've seen, there's a lot of work to do, but we're sort of like construction nerds, I'd call it, right? So we're very precise on the technical side and giving you clear direction. All right, let's work on this week, Jake. Let's do this and let's move on to the next thing. But you still have to do the work. I don't really believe in shortcuts. And, we've spoken about fitness and things like that. It's the same thing. There's no such thing as 6-minute abs. Anyone that's telling you do this for 6 minutes every day and you'll have a six-pack is lying to you. Because that's not how it works. But that's exactly right. The flashy thing. People think, all right, that's a quick solution. I'll just go do that. But mate, if you want a successful business for 10, 20, 30 years, it's worth spending a few months to configure that to work well for you. And it's going to lead to a healthy business over the long term instead of a quick fix, which, as you've probably found, makes things a lot worse in the short term.
Oh, yeah, it totally sucks. It doesn't work. And I mean, honestly, my quick fixes, they never even got implemented. It's just like I tried and it was like, no, that's not going to work. Go back to the old way of me doing everything.
Yeah.
So,
which is not great. So,
which is not good.
Tell us then, how is life different now after the work you've done?
I think Todd asked me the same thing the other day. It's a big mindset change. It's a mindset of like, hey, this is possible. Because like I said, before the program 6 months ago, I'd go by the job site, I'd see problems that probably weren't actually problems. And I would literally think the world was ending. And I'm like, how am I going to grow a construction company? I have all these goals and I can't even trust anyone to like catch these details or do this, do that. And SYCB, going through the program, seeing some of the templates, seeing some of the stuff and how to implement it gave me a total mindset shift in the fact that, it's far from perfect now. It's never going to be perfect, but it is possible to create this team who does care, who does do it right, and who has fantastic results without me having to be there every 3 seconds.
And what would you say has been a significant positive ripple effect for you, having done that?
I sleep at night.
It's very common.
I don't lie awake. I mean, my wife and I a couple months ago were having a conversation. Like our nanny stays until 6 because my wife also works, and we were making a habit of getting home right at 6, and then the baby goes to bed at 7, and that's not awesome because we want to hang out with her. We want to spend time with her, and also like the quick transition from nanny to us coming home wasn't working. So like we started trying to move it up, go 5:30, and now like I think I've been home at 4:30 or 5 almost every day for the past 2 weeks.
So you're getting a couple hours. You're getting an extra hour with your daughter.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've today's my wife's birthday. We were yesterday we go to counseling every 2 weeks just because we like it, and it's something that we do to help our relationship. It's a great spot for us to chat. We did that at 2:00. I went and ran some errands and got some birthday presents that I'd been waiting for her. And then we went and grabbed a drink. So it was like 2:00 in the afternoon. I was basically done for the day, and the world didn't fall apart. Like I checked in this morning and everything is still okay.
Yeah. That's it's like you said before, it's having that balance in life. It's not, you don't want to be extremely successful at one thing, one particular thing. It's being able to, because look, you're probably the same as me. You've listened to a lot of other successful people on podcasts, and everyone talks about their business and what they've achieved. Not a lot of people talk about their families or get that perspective from their families. What does it mean for the child of someone who's super successful who never got to spend time with them? I think about that. I've got a 15-month-old son, and I'm probably on the same parallel. Like I was finding I wasn't present, and I've realized like it's actually quite more significant for me to do that for my kids while they're at that age, because I'll never get that back. I can always, build and develop and whatever the rest of my life, but this is important. So it's important to have that balance as well.
Super important. Yep. So I guess that's what's changed for me. It's been great.
And
it's been really great.
And if I could hit on a nerve, like what was the real fear or the anxiety? What was keeping you awake at night? Because I'm sure you're saying you're seeing things and they're not working out well. But what do you think was actually keeping you awake?
You know what it was? Most of the time it was clients, and thinking like it was clients and thinking of something that needed to get done that I had forgotten to write down, or something that someone else was supposed to do that didn't get done. So it was me worrying about other people's to-do lists, basically, because it all comes back to me and I was the only one that could do it, apparently. That's what I thought. And then clients, the relationship with clients. It took me a while to figure out in construction, proper estimating and setting expectations. And, so much of a relationship, especially a business relationship with clients, is all about setting the expectations and doing the proper budgeting. Because it takes, if you go to them with a high price at the beginning that is going to work, it only takes one tough conversation. If you go in at a low price, my emotions couldn't handle the constant going back to the client. Like, oh no, this came in and over budget. This came in over budget. And I went so many years with that stress, and it killed me. And it took me a while to get to the point where I was like, I set the expectations as best I could, and we did the best work we could. And now I'm providing them with the result of what is happening, and whether it's good or bad, that's for them to decide and not me. Yep. And I try, and also, let's say with the systems in place, it allows you to be so much more proactive. Yep. And I felt like I was always coming to clients with problems after the fact. And now with systems in place, with people actually watching out for stuff and checks and balances, now almost every single problem we have is a proactive problem, and we see it coming. And all we got to do is go to the client and say, hey, this is a problem that's coming down the pike. It's going to cost a lot, but here's an alternative. If you don't want that, it's all your choice. And then it's great because now you're just leaving it up to them.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry that I'm the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just delivering choices and letting them make decisions on what their fate is going to be.
Yeah. And that's, you're in fact providing a better service by doing that, by being proactive, instead of doing what you used to do, which is go in at a lower price to secure the job. But you really under promising there, right? Like you're totally setting an expectation that's
and I don't even think I meant to do it, to be honest. I just it ended up that way. I wasn't that good at estimating, and it was like I didn't want to have the hard conversation up front.
Yeah.
And that was, and like we talked about, that's a large portion of what led to my failed business relationship and personal relationship with my father-in-law. I just didn't want to have the conversation up front. And now I'm like, God, it makes life so much better if you just deal with it right there.
Yeah. But it's also, you're not just delivering bad news. You're also, you're communicating in a way where, hey, this is happening, regardless of whether I'm doing the job or someone else.
Yeah.
This is happening. And here's a solution or an alternative solution sort of thing. So you're not just delivering bad news and being in tough conversation. And I assume that's probably improved your relationships with your clients, if anything.
30-fold. Yeah. It's fantastic. And I mean, really, all I can say is that comes down to communication. I mean, having a weekly meeting with a client, doing an OAC meeting, I thought that was a load of BS. And until I got into with the current development we're working with, it's a lot more commercialized. We really had to step up our systems, all of that stuff. And they require a weekly meeting with everybody. And I think I was worried about the accountability behind that, and worried that I was going to get stuck with stuff, or I don't even know what. It almost created too much accountability, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to fulfill it. And now I'm like, oh my God, even if it's not required, every single job we do, we are having that weekly meeting. We're communicating. We're going to have a weekly agenda of what's happening during that meeting. And we're just going to sit down, even if it's a 10-minute meeting, we're going to talk, and we're just going to say what's happening, what's going good, what's going bad, and figure it out.
Yeah. And there's always going to be that conversation, but hopefully, as I've found, you'll probably find that having that agenda and stuff in place means, again, you're being proactive. And eventually, as the project goes on, there's actually not a lot to discuss in these meetings.
No, there's not. You get to it and you have like 2 items on the list, and you're like, wait, why are we meeting? And it's like, oh, well, we're meeting because we want to keep only 2 items on the list. I don't want the list to get any bigger than 2 items.
And there's nothing better than a very short, concise meeting where you've resolved the issues and everyone leaves instead of sitting there for 2 hours going in circles.
Yes, exactly. 100% right, man.
Well, Jake, I won't keep you for too much longer. Have you got anything else that you wanted to mention or share at all?
Man, I think you asked some really good questions. I think I got it all out. I would just, I think my big thing and the thing that changed my life is coming up with a routine for me personally. And it by focusing on my personal life and focusing on me and allowing myself and my mindset to go inward, it completely changed the paradigm of like just my day-to-day and how things happen. And then the other thing is if you're stuck not hanging out with your baby, or you're stuck talking on the phone while you're holding your baby, like just take a second to think about that and think about what presence means and what that means in your life. And then if you're stuck doing that and you don't want to, then there's opportunities to make a change. SYCB happens to be one of them.
Yeah. And there's plenty, there's plenty of opportunities. A lot of people just go, I just want to give the business away. I just want to end it. And that doesn't have to be the case.
Nope, it does not. So
that's good.
Yeah, man. No, thank you for listening. Sorry about the long-winded pieces of it, I really appreciate it. This was really awesome.
Same here, man. I think a lot of people are going to gain a lot of value from this. And, if people do have questions for you, if they wanted to connect with you, what are the best ways for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And Monish, you're welcome to share my email address on the podcast, but it's jake@momentumdevelopmentmt.com. And welcome to email me. I don't know if you want to share a phone number. You have my phone number. You're welcome to share that too. If anyone wants to call and chat, I love helping out. And then I'm working on getting more active on social media. That's actually one of my goals for the year. Yeah. So not a ton on there lately, but I'm working on it. Instagram is probably the main spot. Just Jake Lewendal on Instagram. Momentum Development, I just put it on there. I don't think I have any content on there, but we'll get some stuff loaded up to see some of the projects we're working on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the best way to get in touch with me. Feel free to DM me on Instagram or ask any questions. I'll do my absolute best to be an open book and provide any value I can to anyone who needs it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much again. And yeah, looking forward to hearing more about your success in the future too.
Sweet. Thanks, Monish. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's Todd here. One more thing before you go. Remember, if you're dealing with chaos every day, if you're spending too much time in firefighting, if your whole team is in reactive mode, it's probably not your team, it's not your clients, it's not your project, it's not you, it's the gaps. And the biggest gap is the one between signing the contract and starting the job. That's where the details get missed. That's where the stress begins. And the fix is simple. It's a solid pre-construction process so you can nail the handoff from the office to the field. We want to help you build that out. And the first step is to schedule your free business evaluation call. Click the link in the show notes. We're going to help you identify the root cause of your chaos, show you how to unlock the profit that's already in your business, and we'll lay out a plan to help you nail the handoff. And if it makes sense, we'll talk about what working together looks like. So click the link in the show notes to schedule your call with my team. Be advised, calls are very limited and not everybody qualifies for these calls. So go book your call today, and I'll see you next time.